For those who have heard me speak before, you might think it's a bit of a strange thing that someone who has spent 20 years researching technology, AI, robotics, the future in terms of demographics and generational change, why would I be speaking about and writing about this whole theme of the psychology of stubbornness? The genesis moment for me in terms of this whole body of research started in late 2015. So I was speaking at a conference just up the road here at the Hilton Hotel on George Street. It was an industry association event, and I'd been brought in to give the keynote before lunch and talk all about the disruptions that were coming for that particular industry. And it was interesting, at the lunch break, there was a book signing at the back of the room, and there was this one woman who came up to me and introduced herself. Her name was Helen. And Helen, was the picture of exasperation. I can still see her, right? And she said, I'm so with you. I can see what's coming for our industry. And she said, I've got to tell you, in my organization, if we don't change, we've got about 5 or 6 years, I reckon, before we are out of business. She said, I know what's coming, but she said, I cannot get my leadership team to be open-minded enough to consider changing. And so I said, well, what have you tried to try to persuade or convince them? And she said, well, I've made the business case. It is rock solid. I've given them all the numbers, and yet they're immoved. And I wonder how many of you have had the same experience. Now, you'll make the business case, maybe in a sales meeting or with one of your teams, or perhaps you're trying to influence up, and you're like, I've made the perfect case, and yet they still can't see it. And here's the thing, this experience is not unique. So the headline stat is you and I spend 40% of our professional life trying to influence others, persuade people, get them to change their thinking or their decisions. And yet, according to a study at Cornell recently, we are only successful in actually changing other people's minds between 3 to 5% of the time. We're just not good at it. And you can look at lots of reasons why we're so ineffective at actually being persuasive, but one of the reasons, the big reasons for this, comes back to this guy here, Francis Bacon. Now, maybe you've perhaps heard his name, but don't really know a lot about him. So he was one of the world's most important thinkers in the early 1600s. He was actually known as the father of the Enlightenment, and a whole lot of his theories and thoughts have shaped the next 400 years in terms of academia and education and even the way business and the legal sector runs. But his big idea was this: humans are essentially reasonable. And so if you're trying to influence somebody or even educate them, that's what we spend so much time in the world of HR doing, trying to educate people to change them. The key is you've got to give them enough reliable evidence and data and information to the point where, you pass a tipping point, they see the light, they see reason and change their mind. We've assumed this for centuries, but it's not true. And not only is it not true, the opposite is true. What we've discovered in the last 15 years is when you're dealing with someone who's stubborn, the harder you press. The more evidence you pile on, the more numbers and pie charts you give, the more stubborn they become. And so the question we've got to ask is, if that doesn't work, what does?